The one thing you should never do, buy a list and blast. Do not do that. You'll end up, your emails will go to spam. Trust me, if you bought the list, thousands of other people have, and so that list is hypersensitive to junk.
Welcome, everyone, to our Hero Capital Show. I'm your host, Tim Mai, and today we have another amazing guest on the line with us, Dr. Adam Gower. Adam is the foremost authority on real estate crowdfunding syndications and has published 5 books on the industry. Dr. Gower combines a lifetime of experience in real estate investment and finance with best-in-class digital marketing strategies to build crowdfunding platforms for real estate capital raisers. And his clients have in excess of $35 billion asset under management and have raised almost $1 billion with minimum investments as low as $25,000 using his systems. And he has taught over 5,000 individuals on how to build wealth, preserve capital, and earn passive income from real estate, from investing in real estate. And Adam himself, in addition to teaching many of his clients raise lots of money, almost $1 billion. He himself has raised over $500 million. And so with that, let's give Dr. Adam Gower a huge Texas welcome, y'all. Woo-hoo!
Yo, yeah.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim. It's good to be here. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's good seeing you. I am super excited for this interview because you've been on my hit list for a while to interview. Yeah, we started this show now almost one more month. It's gonna be 3 years since we started this show, and yeah, I've really been like honored to have interviewed a lot of the industry leaders on the call, and you're definitely among that top industry leader that I've been wanting to interview. So I'm super excited.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's start up. You can share with us a little bit about yourself and how did you get started here into this world of real estate syndications?
Sure. All right. My story goes back quite a long way in real estate. I actually started pulling wires for an electrician in 1982 in Southern California. So that's actually when I started. But very soon after that, I was recruited by a small M&A shop that was doing, actually, they were doing M&A and they were bringing in money from Japan. And I introduced them to a friend of mine who was a ground up multifamily developer. So this is the mid 1980s. And so I ended up I was invited to help them raise capital for this ground up shop. And I tell you what, it's a long time, it's probably before even you were born. I don't know. You look ridiculously young for everything that you've managed to accomplish. But it was a different era in the 80s, right? I didn't know anything at all about real estate. I just came into I knew I'd worked on job sites and I'd pulled wires and I'd worked with contractors and etc. But it was a different world. Interest rates were, to get a mortgage, high teens, 18, 19% mortgages. Money on deposit in the bank was earning me 12%.
Wow.
That's where you put money passive. Money in the bank was getting me 12%, right? So it was a very different era. Anyway, so I made a lot of money on paper, and I didn't really understand the term this time is different. People kept saying this time is different. I thought, different to what? I didn't know what they were talking about. Until, of course, the savings and loan crisis. So now I'll come through much faster. But that was my introduction. So my wealth, which was all built up in ownership shares in these deals that I was putting together, evaporated completely. And I ended up going to Japan. I was hired by Universal Studios. I learned to speak Japanese, and I ran a division of Universal Studios doing all their real estate, Asia Pacific region, through the 90s. When I came back, I started doing my own developments as a general partner. In Los Angeles, I did infill developments. And in 2007, right before the global financial crisis, I sold everything. I cashed out. So going into the GFC, I had no legacy issues and was hired by East West Bank, who are the largest, at the time, they were the largest regional bank headquartered in California. And they'd done, I don't know, a lot of lending, real estate collateralized lending. And a lot of those loans were in default. So my job was to sell those non-performing loans to investors. So this was pre-Jobs Act. There was no, you couldn't, this stuff I could market because we weren't selling shares, we were selling loans. But there was no crowdfunding, there was no syndication, public general solicitation. It was a very different world. So the audience people I sold to was relatively small. Short story, I try and get to just end where I am now as fast as I can. But I left there. I was hired by Gower Capital, which is a Hong Kong Chinese family office. I ran a $200 million portfolio from them looking for non-performing loans. Went to Colony Capital and worked on a $7 billion portfolio of non-performing loans that we had bought in partnership, actually. It's technical, but in partnership with the FDIC from failed banks. So that was my job then, was to work on those portfolios. And then when the industry picked up after the downturn had started to reverse, I started doing seed and angel investing in little startups, unrelated to real estate. It was just interesting to make these little investments. But these kids were talking a new language, and it was the language of digital marketing. So when the Jobs Act was passed, I realized that there was an opportunity. So this is 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, that there was an opportunity to raise capital using digital marketing in a way that I had never been allowed to do it before, permitted to do it before, even though I've raised a lot of capital in my career. And so that's really where these two things came together. It's about 11 years ago when I formed Gower Crowd and started helping. I don't raise capital. I help our clients raise capital.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah. And wow. So in the 80s, I just came here to the US. I came in 1987. I was 12 years old. So I heard about all the craziness with the interest rates back in the 80s. And but yeah, of course, I was too young to really experience it. So you get to watch this whole industry, this real estate syndication industry develop pretty much. Like the whole Reg D, 506B, C that we have today didn't really exist back then, right? Or was it?
Oh no, but that's actually technically not true because people think of syndication as being something new. It isn't. Actually, America was built on syndications in the pre-1933 world of the Securities Acts, right? Securities Acts of 1933. The railroads were financed using syndications. Everything was financed using syndications. People would say, here, buy these securities, right? That's what they did. They were private offerings. Sometimes once they were private, they then might go to the public world. It was all syndication. So that's deep history. But from 1933, it was prohibited to solicit an investor unless you had a pre-existing relationship. But syndications were still formed. They were more these kind of cliched ideas that you had to join the country club, right? So you join the country club, you get to know a bunch of people, typically guys. You get to about a bunch of guys who are all well-heeled, and this one's in that business, this one's in that, you're in real estate. And you'd say to them, yeah, I got a deal at the corner of Walk and Crosswalk, and it's $1 million minimum. And so everyone would invest, right? But that right there was syndication. What changed in 2012 was the ability or the prohibition to basically to advertise was lifted. So now you can advertise to raise money for a deal. That's what changed everything. That was the switch that changed everything, because now you don't have to have a pre-existing relationship, meaning you don't need to know somebody already and have known them for years and etc. Now you can advertise and you can sell these securities to people you have never met and may never meet in your life, basically.
Gotcha. Okay, now I understand why majority of syndications are 506B, because that's where it started.
Used to be 506Bs, yeah.
Yes, okay. Now I understand. Yeah, and I think that with platforms like Facebook, Meta ads and Google ads, I think that 506C, especially in the last couple of years here where the 506B money dry up a bit because people money are stuck in deals. I see more ads now for offerings than I've seen previously. So it's cool to learn a little bit about that history. I'm super curious behind your board there. Will you tell us what's all that about? It looks like you were teaching someone on how to raise capital on LinkedIn.
Yes, all right. So we build these systems for our clients. Some of your marketing, by the way, on LinkedIn, I didn't correct it there, but I figured I'd do it right now. I have not helped my clients raise $35 billion. Just to be clear, they have assets under management of in excess of about 35 billion. I have my system, using my systems, they have raised probably close to $1 billion with $25,000 minimum. So just to be
Gotcha.
clear. But we charge our clients pay us about 15,000 a month for 6 months, or sometimes 3 months. We'll compress it into 3 months. So we typically only work with clients that are very well established, multi-cycle, seasoned pros who understand the value of what we do for them. But there's a lot of people that are just starting. So I also teach. I run a mastermind once in a while. I've got probably do one in June or something. But I teach people exactly what we do, basically the exact process that we implement for our private clients. So I used to, but I didn't know how to teach. Right? It's like, how do you teach? I don't know how to teach. I ended up going to Cal Poly. So I'm Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I did a bit at USC as well, University of Southern California. And I learned to teach by teaching students. I actually had these courses. I'll tell you what was fun about that. And so I used whiteboards. So I'll tell you what was fun about that, though, Tim, was that they used to these staid, boring professors. I don't mean to say that. Some of them were really interesting, but yeah, I'm a marketer at heart. I'd already been doing marketing. So I created these incredible marketing campaigns. Sign up for my course. It was so much fun doing that. So I had hundreds of students. It was just like these huge classes of students. And I actually learned a lot that you can apply to capital raising. So let's get really specific. Everyone here wants to know capital raising. So let's move from me into something somebody can actually use. So think about this. When you are raising capital, you are, if you're doing it properly, you are in front of everyone, right? If you're doing it properly, you're in front of everyone, everywhere, all the time. And the reason that you do it that way is because you don't know who might want to invest with you. So you want to project your value proposition and who you are out there as much as possible, so that those people who relate to you will gravitate towards you. This is this idea of magnetic, you create magnetic messaging. That's exactly what happens. If you project your value prop out there, you will attract people to you. And we can get into this in more detail. It's actually a very important topic, especially with as many capital raises as there are. It's really authenticity. I'm going to jot this down actually, so I don't forget to talk about this. Is really important. So when you are sitting, so here's how to understand how it works in various ways. But here's one way, just to continue this example of teaching students. So most people here, if you've not taught students, you've been a student, right?
Yeah.
So stood in the audience. So you know what it looks like. You've got one person at the front who's standing up, who is teaching you something, educating you in something. And they're really teaching you two things. They're teaching you about the subject, but you are also learning that they are an expert in the subject, right? So their reputation elevates at the same time as your knowledge of the topic elevates. Now, when you're standing in that teaching position, what do you see? This is something that I saw. I actually used some slides in one of my parts of the mastermind that I put together to demonstrate this point. But when you're sitting in a room full of students, here's what, along the top row are all of those students who have to be there for some reason, but do not want to be there. And you can tell because their laptops are open. They're paying no attention. They're probably playing video games or watching YouTube or something, right? They are zoned out. And then as you come closer, you've got this band in the middle. especially if you've got hundreds of students like I have. You've got this band in the middle who are, they're there, they're not really that engaged, but they've got a pass and they're semi-enthusiastic. And then here's the important group, is there's this group on the front row, and they always sit on the front row, who are locked on. They are listening to absolutely everything that you are saying and that you're teaching them. They have the highest regard for you, and they really want to learn from you. That is a metaphor, if you like, if that's the right word, for the capital raising world. Because you're going to have that group of people on the back row who think you are a complete loser, and they really don't want to have anything at all to do with you. They're just not interested. And then you've got a large group of people who will never engage with you, won't invest with you, not for any nefarious reason or that, because they don't like you, because they're indifferent. Then they won't invest in real estate. They're indifferent, but they still see you. It's the ones on the front row, and I figured this out. It's about 5%. There's not that many. Class of 100, there are 5 who are super locked on, like really hyper focused. It's a very small percentage, but those are the people who will change your life. And so what I learned about teaching, and this is something as a capital raiser that you should do, is don't worry about trying to win the losers on the back row. I don't mean to be rude about them, but those who think you're a loser, you'll never win them over, right? There's no chance. And that band in the middle who are risk averse for whatever reason are not going to invest in real estate, and they're certainly not going to invest with you. They're going to go through somebody else, whatever. There's no point trying to communicate to them because they're not going to invest with you either. The ones that you want to be focused on are those on the front row. They are your avatar. They are your ideal prospect. And so all of your messaging should be oriented to that group of people who love what you do, love what you say, and really like you. Okay, and we can move to how do you figure out who those people are as well, if you like.
Yes, we totally. I'd love to do that, and we can turn this into like the mini version of the course that of what you teach. So yeah, let's go into. So how do you find those 5 people? Those
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know in percentages wise, but 1%. So
tiny number of people.
Yeah.
But listen, Tim, by the way, if you have a different agenda for today, that's fine. You told me before we started in the few seconds, it's about capital raising.
Yeah, I love it. Yes.
Okay, all right, fine.
We'll go into
okay,
that.
So everything you've been told, this is one of those classic marketing lines. Everything you've been told about your ideal avatar, your investor avatar, is wrong. And by the way, I've been teaching this same thing for the last 10 years. I'm going to tell you why it's wrong and how it's changed. First of all, let's get this exactly right. So the other way to understand what you are doing when you are online, this is so important, actually. I'll keep these lines of thought here. So I'm going to get to the shopkeeper analogy as well. But think of the bell curve. Do you remember the bell curve? We called it the norm curve, the bell curve. So the bell curve is the same idea as the room full of students. There are those who think you're a loser. There are those who are indifferent. And then on one side, there are those who are become predisposed to working with you, to investing with you before you even ask them. All right. So that is the avatar. And so what everybody says, everyone tells you, including me, by the way, for the last 10 years, but you got to evolve, right? You got to be willing to change your mind. You know why? It shows you have one. So here's the thing. So the normal narrative about finding the ideal investor is you've got to identify who it is. And you've got to identify their demographics and their characteristics. And let's just pick one example, physicians, right? You got to find doctors because they're all rich and they all invest in real estate. And so we got to find these guys. So what you end up doing, what you have been taught to do, which is wrong, is to adjust your messaging to cater to that group. There's no way to do that. You cannot fake it. right? So what are you going to do? Plus, we're not really dealing with, if you are Nike or Coca-Cola or some mass consumption consumer market company, Procter and Gamble. Yes, then you can create this hyper-targeted marketing because you are literally spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year, if not billions, on marketing, and you are trying to get out to hundreds of millions of people. So your marketing needs to be narrow, right? It needs to be focused on specific demographics. But for thee and me, 100 people in our network who invest is the difference between, it's what will change your life. So you're really looking for a very tiny market of investors who will invest with you or through you, who will change your life. So there's little point spending huge amounts of effort trying to tailor your marketing on physicians or IT professionals or some other demographic. Your ideal avatar is you. You are your ideal avatar. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is all you need to do is be yourself. Stop copying and pasting everybody else's messaging. Stop using templates. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. We've had a lot of success with LinkedIn. And I see so many allocators and capital raisers. All they do is blag on about, excuse me for saying, direct, earn passive income, build wealth, and gain financial freedom through real estate. It's just cliched nonsense that thousands of people are spitting out at the same time, the same thing amplified by AI. Give me 10 versions of this. Okay, I just booked my next 2 weeks of posts. Right? Done. It's nonsense. Instead, because first of all, everybody's doing it. So all there's no differentiation. And all there is noise. Oh, and by the way, all the people you're trying to attract have lost money. They don't believe you anymore. They went into this promise 3-4 years ago, and now they've got distribution stopped, capital calls, and have lost money. So that noise is just annoying, right? Not just to me, but your prospect. And you're thinking it's difficult to find and raise capital today? Hey, guess what? This is one of the reasons why. So what you need to do is to unwrap yourself, your true self. Who are you? What drives you? What do you do first thing in the morning? What are your hobbies? What's worrying you? How are you relating to the world as it is today? Share these thoughts. And a great way to do that, I'm obviously self-promotion, but follow me on LinkedIn. Because, by the way, this is not easy to do. I'm doing it, and I'm just evolving into this and finding it to be incredibly powerful. Because what I'm finding is that instead of going out to physicians and saying, hey, look, I can speak your language. I can pretend to be like you, right? So you must like me because I'm pretending to be a physician and think like you. Instead, I'm being more and more like me and more authentic to who I am, which is not easy actually to do. And what's happening is that it is attracting people who think my way and who think the way that I think. And they are coming from every possible walk of life you can imagine. I could never have found them if I pretended to be like them in an attempt to attract them. But by being more me and more authentically me and more honest to myself about who I am, and you do the same thing, it actually attracts people who really like me. Actually, it's really cool. And I like them as well. We think the same. We're really connected. So that's your avatar, is actually you.
That's so good. That's really good. It's so funny, but I just happened to talk to a fund manager today. I'm going to be interviewing her. She's new. She's only been at it for a year and a half. And she already raised $5 million for her. Her first year was just learning it, raised $1.5 million. And this year is her second year, 5 months in, and she already raised 4.5 million. And I asked her the questions like, who's your avatar? Because she's on top of that, she's from Canada and she doesn't have any network in the US. And so she built her entire network like brand new from Canada, looking for investors in the US. And I asked her, it's like, who's your avatar that you go after? And I make these videos that I do about me and my lifestyle. And so I don't really have an avatar. I was like, great. Because I put it in the category of the psychographic type avatar rather than the demographic type avatar. And so it's so interesting and coincidence that I just had that conversation today, which is not a normal conversation. People usually will tell you like, yeah, this is my avatar. But I love the way that you're putting it and using the classroom analogy to kind of explain how your ideal prospect shows up because of who you are and like because of the way that you communicate, the way you express yourself. So good. I love it.
You know what's really fun about it as well, actually, Tim, is that I've started to find that I'm meeting people I really like. And because they're being drawn to me, it's really interesting that I'm being increasingly true to myself. So it's not that I've lived a fake life. I'm just thinking more deeply about life. And I think that everybody has, and by the way, my undergraduate work was political, crowd, and media psychology. So I went to London School of Economics and political science. I studied psychology in those days. And we all live two lives in a way. And just think about this carefully as I say it. We live a life where we act a role, where we're with somebody, we present ourselves in a certain way because we think that is how they want, we think that's how they expect us to be, right?
Yep.
We act out a role wherever we are. But inside our minds, whenever we see things or we read the news or we see something as we're driving along the street, we activate there's certain deep truths to the way that we relate to the world that we don't actually often articulate. So when you do have those thoughts about, you see an article and you think something, you see it in a certain way, you interpret it in a certain way, my advice is write that down. What was that thought that you had about this article, about tariffs or about immigration or whatever it's, you don't want to get political, or about a particular sponsor that you saw? There was something that just rubbed you up the wrong way and you didn't say anything, but you felt it. That is the perfect kind of thing to talk about. Now, you don't want to talk about somebody specifically, but it's those deeper thoughts that really reflect who we really are. And what's interesting is it resonates with people. The conversations that I've been having with people, and I've been very straightforward about my concerns about the economy recently, and that we're heading, I think, into a serious recession, real estate recession, like a fundamental shift, is that the people I talk to, the investors that come to me, and I don't even attempt to attract investors. It's the funniest thing. When I express these thoughts to them in a conversation, they are relieved. They just find relief because in their minds, they're also thinking the same way. And all they hear is earn passive income, build wealth, and gain financial freedom. They think, what am I missing? And then I show up and I say, no, I actually think something else is going on here. There's this palpable sense of relief. I got an email from somebody this morning saying, I've got a bucket load of money in my IRA. I want to convert it to an ST IRA. Have you found anything to invest in yet? She asked. I'm waiting for you, for me. Somebody's actually waiting for me to bring something to them. It's amazing how it works. Anyway,
wow.
If you don't stop me, Tim, I'll just keep blagging on. You know that, don't you? So I'm going to pause now and give you a chance.
I love it. I love it. So what about this? Because I am, and it's my personality too, I like to be positive. I'm more high energy. So while there's certain thoughts I might have that, let's say a thought I have about a particular sponsor or a particular way that sponsors do their business that I don't like. But to me, it's an introspection And because it is negative, I don't want to put it out there. How do you address that? How can we turn what might be? So I'll give you an example. Let's give you a real legit example, right? There's a lot of sponsors in today's world where they need money. And they get into marginal deals because they get paid this acquisition fee and disposition fee, all of that stuff, right? And they might be very good sponsors. They might have a very strong track record, but you can see when you analyze it, you can see, okay, they're going to this thinner deals than they normally are. I'm sure it's to feed their staff of 100 plus employees with these upfront fees. And so I think about those things and I put those things in considerations when I'm analyzing a deal sponsor, but it's not something I would put out to the public. So how would you address something like that?
So I'm not exactly sure. Okay, so let's just explore this idea a little bit more, Tim. What is it exactly? So your concern when you see these sponsors is that they're motivated, their motivation is misaligned with their
Correct.
investment. They're motivated
Correct.
to do a deal for the fees, basically.
Right.
They're
Yep.
fee oriented for whatever reason. So so there's a couple ways you can write about that. First of all, you don't want to name names.
Oh yeah.
I
For
do
sure.
all the time because I see people. You cannot be. So you really have. These guys are not good. You should not be doing this, but I can't do that. So I'll end up being sued or whatever. So
Right.
I just know at the end of the day, there's guys out there that you guys should not be dealing with. But anyway, it's all separate. It isn't actually exactly this topic. So how do you do that without being personal or rude? But at least, or even libelous, even worse. But
Right.
at least express that concern. I actually battle with that all the time. So this idea of fees, there are a couple of ways that you can work that. I'll give you an example of somebody. So Michael Episcope, I had a conversation with him. He runs Origin Investments. They're one of the top shops in the country. I've known Michael since I started, actually. He was one of the first people I spoke to when I was writing my book. In fact, he endorsed it. I got a little endorsement on one of my first books. He was kind enough to write Leaders of the Crowd. So Michael, the biggest challenge that Michael had, and this was 10 years ago when he was just starting, was that they were conservative investors, right? This was conservative investors. One of the biggest challenges is that when we underwrite our deals, we hit these IRRs, these projected IRR levels that are mid-teens or whatever. And you've got all these guys out there who are inflating their numbers to demonstrate a higher IRR, right? Oh, we're in the mid-20s. Why invest with him and when you can get 25% with us? And then there was this extra layer that was emerged after crowdfunding or general solicitation was permitted, that the crowdfunding websites started to notice, and I've reported on this, was that the higher the IRR, the more prospects show up to the webinars. So the bigger the IRR, the more people show up. Right. So they started to reinforce this by telling people who wanted to show up and market on their platform, your IRR isn't high enough. We're not going to get enough people. Go back. And so what that created was what I call the crowdfunding paradox, that as the market gets longer in the tooth, right, these numbers should compress, prices go up, competition goes up, IRRs come down because you pay more, it's just tighter. But in the crowdfunding world, you have this paradox that people were competing on IRR. So where was I going with that? So Michael Episcope wrote an article that was one of the most popular articles on his website. This is the challenge that we face, is that we really do underwrite these deals on best, worst, and most likely case scenarios. These are our IRRs, and we're out in the market with people who are inflating that IRRs. This is how easy it is to do that. You're on a 5-year horizon with an 18% IRR, perfect. Pull the exit down to 4 years and suddenly you got a 25% IRR, right? Super easy to do. So he wrote an article about that. And what that did was it educated an educatable investor into what the IRR is, and started drawing them over into his group. By the way, he became famous for raising 105 million in 19 hours as well, by the way. It's a whole different story. So very successful. To answer your question so now this was 10 years ago. So the dark ages, we had to wind our computers up then and actually think about what we were going to write about or hire a writer. We don't need to do that now, Tim. And this was our conversation last week or the week before. You can use AI. So you can ask AI, you can say, look, I've got this. I don't know how to write this article. I want to express this concern that I have about the industry and what I'm seeing, but I want it to come across as being professional, and I don't want to point fingers. I don't want to be seen as being negative or unpleasant. So help me structure an article around this original thought that I've got. In fact, somebody put this up here, beautiful. Andrew, thank you for commenting over here in the chat. It's like a journal entry, right? You're writing it in your journal. I saw this guy, I really didn't trust him. I think he's doing it for fees, right? Okay, that you can get AI to help you craft an article that is your original thought, but worded. It writes so well. I'm a PhD. I got a PhD, so I've written a lot of stuff, original content, and I'm blown away by how excellent AI is in doing it. So that's be my suggestion.
Gotcha. I love it. Yeah, I love that. All right, let's switch gear a little bit and talk about marketing channels. What marketing channel, I know you're big on LinkedIn. What marketing channels have you found to work really well between you and your clients to attract investors?
Okay, so the default is Meta, is Facebook. I'll give you some specific numbers for that. If you have a well-built website, and that means best of class, it's the kind of website that we build. If you've got a best of class lead generating educational website, a good online presence, your numbers on Facebook should look like this when you advertise. You should be converting 2% of leads. Your average cost of getting an accredited investor lead is going to be between $150 and $100. And your actual cost of getting an actual investor, not a lead, between $3,500 and $4,500, right? First time investor. Second time they invest is zero because you send them an email. So you got to think about lifetime value. So those are some basic numbers, assuming you got a good platform to start with. However, there's a lot more expense involved with Facebook, not just the $900 that they ping your credit card with every time you hit that limit. But in order to hit those numbers, 2% conversion rate, you got to call every lead. Some lead comes through, you got to call them ideally within the first 30 seconds. Imagine that. And then tee them up for a follow-up call with somebody on the IR team. So you've actually got a lot of heavy lifting with Facebook that does not show up in your actual costs. That's number one. LinkedIn, I've been intensively working on LinkedIn over the last 8 months. It is exceptionally good for finding and targeting. It is time consuming, and I do recommend you do it yourself and don't use VAs. If you use a VA, you basically, why bother? No, you want to meet people, so go out and meet people. All right. So I know a lot of people use VAs. What can I tell you? It's extremely obvious. I'm not sure why. Anyway, but I'm also old school. I know that I'm raising millions and millions of dollars, tens or if not hundreds of millions. So it's worth the time and the effort, but it's not that much, like an hour a day. It's not like a huge commitment. Okay. So those are two channels. The other channel that we've found, there are a few that are really good. What I recommend is that our clients just go with what is best for you, what works best for you. If you like speaking to people, you should have phone calls in your funnels. If you don't, and you just want to use emails, make sure it's structured that way. Podcasts, amazing. Get on podcasts. Those are an amazing free resource that you can use. You meet interesting people. It's a good channel. You can do some paid webinars as well, actually. I'm not sure if they do them much these days, but RIA Database used to run them, and Wealth Management, they run them as well. You get 100, 200 RIAs or wealth managers, and they'll send you the list the day after. These are the people that signed up, name, email address, company, whole bunch of stuff. Those are pretty good as well. Although the wealth manager industry is extremely difficult to penetrate. It's really difficult. Paid newsletter advertising. Oh, by the way, one thing never ever, again, another great marketing term. The one thing you should never do, buy a list and blast. Do not do that. You'll end up, your emails will go to spam. Trust me, if you bought the list, thousands of other people have. And so that list is hypersensitive to junk. Do not do that. But you can pay people to send out emails for you in their name. And those are newsletters. So find some of the real estate. We do promotions with my newsletter, and you pay somebody to insert an ad in their regular newsletter. So it's going out in their name with a link in the ad to your website or landing page so that somebody signs up. So those are good. Newsletters are good. And then the other area that is actually very good, again, provided you have a really robust website, lead generating website, good online presence, first is conferences. Go and speak at conferences. If you are that way inclined, we have a client who has 3 people that manage inbound leads. We build all the funnels for them, everything for them. And all he does is go around talking on stages to people, and they raise between 5 and 10 million a month. Imagine that.
Wow.
5 and 10 million a month. Although that's gone down recently, but they raise a lot of money, and he just shows up and goes to conferences and meetups and meets people. That's all he does. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of new people starting out, they don't have the ad budget. They don't really have the credibility to be able to go to conferences and be able to speak, get invited to speak. So if they're starting out, how would you teach them to go about it, be able to attract investors and have investors see them as an authority, as a subject matter expert enough to trust them to invest with them?
Yeah, so you're not an authority and you're not a subject matter expert. So you've just got to be realistic about that. As soon as you attempt to embellish your experience, track record, assets under management, which I see all the time, you are misleading investors. You are active in the securities world, and you can end up in deep trouble. So don't exaggerate anything ever. Be honest. So now we get back, actually perfect, full circle, to 2 things. Authenticity, which we talked about, right? Being yourself. But the second thing is this idea that I don't talk about. It's the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper. So I am originally from England, as you may be able to tell. And England is known on the continent of Europe as a country of shopkeepers. That's what they call the English, with shopkeepers. So think about it. I don't know, you live in a big city, you live in a small town, and there are probably places that you go and shop where they may be big chains or big multinational companies, but there may be those that are small mom and pop outfits that you go to because you really like the people. You like them. They're good people. You get to know them, right? You get to know the cashier, or even the supermarket. You get to know the cashiers, the checkout people. I live in a small town, so you get to know people and you like them. And they may not be the cheapest, but they live in your town and you want to give them business and you want to help them out. So for somebody starting in capital raising, that's where you should start. Think of yourself as a local shopkeeper. Go to local meetups. Be honest about what you're doing. Don't try and tell somebody you've got 4,000 units under management because you invested $10 with somebody who has had 4,000 units under management. That is misleading. It's not true. Be honest. You could say to somebody, this is what I do. I was a physical therapist. I was a PT. I was a poker player. I was whatever I was. And I've started learning and teaching myself about real estate, and I'm understanding it. I'm going to invest some of my own money. I'm going to do a fix and flip, or I'm going to do this, but I need a little bit more money, and I want to raise money from friends and family, people first. You will start. That's where you start. You start locally and just be straightforward with people, learn and walk them through the spreadsheet. And as they ask you questions that you cannot answer, learn the answer, go back, and then next time anyone that asks you that same question, you'll know the answer. You'll know how to answer it. So my recommendation is to start local and get to know people and raise money from people and be completely honest about it. Again, don't try and pretend you're something you're not. And the best way to make money in real estate, Tim, is to make it slowly. So think long term. Don't be in such a rush. And particularly now, don't be in such a rush to raise millions of dollars because, we're heading into some serious turbulence. Just be patient.
So let's talk about that, and then we'll wrap up this part of our show, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So what are you seeing in this market, this upcoming market? What is this turbulence that you are seeing?
So obviously there are some, and this is for a much longer conversation, but the high level is an erosion of, so everything that we talk about in this industry is what? No one can trust.
Yep.
No one can trust somebody to invest with them. And then getting back to what we said, they have to know and trust you to invest with you. That's why you need to be you in order for them to know, like, and trust you. The same thing applies at a geopolitical level. And irrespective of your politics, and I don't discuss politics, the fact is that trust in American institutions, in American leadership, and more importantly, or related, in the dollar and its strength as the reserve currency is eroding extremely rapidly. And as that starts to happen, we find ourselves now, particularly with this overlay of tariffs and the way they're on, off, etc., and this unpredictability and uncertainty in the market, we are now in an extremely fragile period of change. And I call them a black cygnet. You know what a cygnet is? CYGNET is a little swan. You don't call them baby swans. They're called cygnets. So we're not looking at a black swan event isn't what necessarily will break the economy now, but a little black cygnet event, a small black swan could break the economy. And until there is clearer understanding, less uncertainty, and clearer understanding of where we're headed, I think you've got to be really careful and prudent. By the way, I'm not the only person that thinks that way. Warren Buffett has now gone to more and more cash than he's ever had. Was he sitting on $35 billion of cash at the moment? Imagine that. So I'm not the only one that thinks this way. I'm not sure how closely he looks at real estate, but I imagine he's got the same concerns that I do. So I think it's worth being patient for a while.
Very good. Good advice. Thank you. Adam, for those that want to reach out to you, learn from you, be a part of your community, where would you like to send them?
Thank you for asking that. So go to gowercrowd.com. That's my last name, GOWER crowd, gowercrowd.com, and just subscribe to my newsletter. There's a big subscribe button there. And my newsletters go out actually slightly sporadically at the moment. So every time I record a podcast rather than weekly. But once or twice a week, you get an email from me. And if you reply to that, I'm on the other end of it. And I'd be happy to get back to you with any questions that you might have.
Excellent, Adam. Thank you, sir.